Okay, so you want to buy raw land, a blank canvas, no HOA, no neighbor's fence 6 feet from your window, no previous owner's bad decisions to undo, just open acreage, priced by the acre instead of by the square foot, waiting for you to build exactly the self-sufficient life you've been picturing. According to the National Association of Realtors, land sales have climbed for 4 straight years, driven largely by buyers chasing exactly this fantasy: self-sufficiency, space, a place to finally build off-grid instead of just watching videos about it. It sounds like the cheapest square footage you'll ever own. It is not. Here's the part the listing photo, usually just a drone shot of grass, conveniently leaves out. By the end of this video, you'll understand why the acre price on the listing is almost never the real price of that acre, and what actually determines whether a cheap parcel turns out to be the expensive one. You'll see the exact test that can kill a land purchase entirely months after you've already signed, for a reason that has nothing to do with the land looking any different. You'll find out why raw land is one of the only assets in this entire plan that can sit completely idle for years and still cost you real money every single one of them. And you'll know by the time this is over whether the parcel you're picturing is a foundation you can actually build on, or a very long, very expensive to-do list disguised as a bargain. So what does it actually cost to close on a piece of raw land? According to the USDA's most recent land values report, the national average for farm real estate, land plus any structures, sits at $4,350 an acre, but that single number is close to useless on its own. At the state level, it ranges from $725 an acre in New Mexico to $22,500 an acre in Rhode Island. Pasture land nationally averages $1,920 an acre, up 79% since 2011 alone. And here's the trap most first-time buyers walk straight into. Smaller parcels cost more per acre than large ones, not less. A 1 to 5 acre starter parcel typically runs 30 to 100% higher per acre than the county average, because that average is usually pulled from much larger farm and ranch sales. Now add what the listing price never includes. A land survey to confirm your actual boundaries runs $500 to $2,000. Title insurance and closing costs typically add another 2 to 5% of the purchase price. And then there's financing, which is where most buyers coming from a home mortgage mindset get genuinely blindsided. A home loan might ask for 3 to 20% down. A raw land loan asks for 30 to 50% down, at an interest rate 1 to 3 points higher than a mortgage. Call it 8 to 10% in the current market, over a term of just 5 to 15 years instead of 30. On a $100,000 parcel, that's $30,000 to $50,000 in cash before the bank will even talk to you, at a payment that has to be covered by nothing, because raw land produces no income and nobody's living on it yet. Run the tally. Land itself, anywhere from a few hundred to tens of thousands of dollars an acre, depending entirely on where and how much. Survey, title, and closing costs 2 to 5% on top. A down payment that runs 5 to 10 times higher proportionally than the one on the house you already own. And you haven't cleared a single tree or poured a single foundation yet. So if the acre price isn't the real price, what actually is? Here's the part that breaks people's brains about how raw land actually works as an investment. 2 parcels can sit right next to each other, identical on paper, same acreage, same zoning, same county, and be worth wildly different amounts, because one of them is what the industry calls development ready, and the other one is just dirt. A parcel with a passed perc test, a recorded survey, road frontage, and utility access at the property line can be worth 2 or 3 times what an untested, unsurveyed, access uncertain parcel next door sells for, even though a drone shot of both would look identical. So here's the paradox sitting at the center of this entire purchase. You're not buying a homestead. You're buying a blank piece of paper and a very long, very expensive list of things you still have to build on it, and the actual value of that piece of paper depends almost entirely on how much of that list somebody has already crossed off. The acre price you saw in the listing was never really the price of the dirt. It was the price of the dirt in whatever state of readiness it happened to be in, and readiness is worth real money. The secondary efficiency almost nobody markets when they show you a wide open field is this. The smart move on raw land usually isn't finding the cheapest acre. It's paying a little more for a parcel where someone already answered the expensive questions. Can you build here? Can you get to it? Can you put a septic system in the ground? Because every one of those unanswered questions is a cost you're about to inherit, whether or not it shows up in the sale price. Access is the readiness factor buyers check last, if they check it at all. According to land industry data, somewhere around 15 to 20% of rural parcels created by subdividing a larger tract end up landlocked, no direct legal access to a public road because the original subdivision never recorded a formal easement. Cross a neighbor's land informally for years and it feels like access. It isn't legally until it's recorded. Buying that legal right-of-way after the fact can cost $1,000 to $20,000 depending on what the neighbor decides to charge. And building the actual road, once you have the right to cross it, runs $15 to $25 a linear foot, $20,000 to $33,000 for a quarter mile of gravel. Through typical terrain, more with culverts or a creek crossing. So what's the test that can kill the whole purchase? Here's the fatal mistake that catches an enormous share of first-time land buyers. And it's not the price, it's the percolation test. The perc test, a soil test that determines whether the ground can actually support a septic system. Most counties won't issue a building permit for anything with plumbing without one, which means without a passing perc test, you generally cannot legally build a habitable home on the property at all, no matter how much you paid for it. The test itself is cheap. A licensed soil scientist digs a hole, fills it with water, and times how fast it drains, $300 to $3,000 depending on property size and how many test sites the county requires. What's not cheap is what happens if it fails. According to land industry data, a failed perc test can cut a property's value in half or more, and in the worst cases makes the land essentially unmarketable for residential use at any price. Half the value gone on paper in one afternoon. If it fails, your options are testing a different spot on the property since soil conditions can vary within just 100 feet, or moving to an engineered alternative system, sand filters, mound systems, aerobic treatment units which run $12,000 to $25,000 instead of the $5,000 to $10,000 a standard system costs. This is the specific threat the drone shot listing photo can never show you. A beautiful, level, perfectly buildable looking field can fail its perc test on the very first hole for reasons that have nothing to do with how the land looks and everything to do with soil composition dozens of feet underground. And because most buyers don't test before they close, they find this out after they already own it. Is empty land getting safer to hold or riskier? There's a bigger force sitting underneath every idle acre in this country, and it's one most buyers never see coming because it doesn't show up until years after closing. The cost of owning land that isn't doing anything yet. Property taxes don't pause because a parcel is empty. And in many agricultural states, buyers get steered toward land carrying a special agricultural tax valuation, sometimes cutting the annual bill by 90% or more compared to full market value, without fully understanding what maintaining that valuation actually requires. Here's the mechanism. That lower tax bill exists because the county is valuing the land based on what it produces agriculturally, not what it would sell for. The moment you change that use, clear it, subdivide it, or simply stop whatever qualifying agricultural activity was happening on it, including building the house you bought the land for in the first place, many states can trigger what's called a rollback tax. The county recalculates what you would have paid at full market value for the past 3 to 5 years, adds interest, typically 5 to 7% annually, and bills you the difference all at once. On a parcel that's appreciated meaningfully, that single bill can run tens of thousands of dollars, arriving the same year you finally start building your homestead. That's the part that makes this genuinely structural rather than bad luck. It's not a scam and it's not a mistake by any one county. It's simply how agricultural valuation programs are designed to work in state after state to keep working farmland from being taxed like a subdivision. The buyer this catches isn't the careless one, it's the one who saw ag exempt on a listing, treated it as a bonus, and never asked what happens to that exemption the day they actually build. So why does anyone still do this? Because for the buyer who does the homework up front, tests the soil before closing, understands exactly what the tax valuation requires, and prices the financing correctly from the start, raw land remains one of the few assets in this whole plan that can be bought outright, built exactly to spec, and held for decades of appreciation with no landlord, no HOA, and no previous owner's decisions to undo. So what does this look like in real numbers, parcel to parcel? 2 buyers, same county, same size parcel, different amount of homework. Buyer 1 paid a slight premium for a 10-acre parcel that already had a past perc test, a recorded survey, and full disclosure on its valuation status. Purchase price $65,000, financed at 40% down with land loan terms. Total acquisition cost including survey confirmation, title, and closing, $68,500. She built her home on the already tested site 2 years later, converting exactly the portion she needed and keeping the rest under agricultural use, avoiding any rollback exposure. Total 5-year cost of ownership, land and carrying cost combined, $79,000, and she owns a parcel with a confirmed, provably buildable home site. Buyer 2 found what looked like a bargain 10-acre parcel nearby for $50,000, untested, unsurveyed, and carrying an ag valuation nobody explained to him. He financed it the same way, saving roughly $6,000 up front compared to buyer 1. 2 years in, his perc test came back failed on the first site and required a second round of testing plus an engineered system, adding $18,000 he hadn't budgeted for. The following year, converting a portion of the parcel to build triggered a rollback tax bill of $11,000 on the ag valuation he didn't know he needed to maintain. Total 5-year cost of ownership, $84,000, $5,000 more than buyer 1 paid for the parcel that came pre-tested, despite starting $15,000 cheaper on paper. Same county, same acreage, a gap of $5,000 that flips the entire narrative because the expensive parcel was actually the cheaper one once every hidden cost got counted. It came down to 2 pieces of paperwork nobody made either buyer produce before closing, a soil test and a tax status disclosure, and only one of them asked for both. So, was it actually a blank canvas? Picture that open field again. No fence, no neighbor's window 6 feet away, no previous owner's mistakes to undo. For the buyer who tests before they close, that picture holds up completely, genuinely blank, genuinely theirs to build exactly as pictured. But for the buyer who skips the homework, the canvas was never actually blank. The lines were already drawn underground, in soil composition and county tax code, months before the first survey stake ever went in. The land keeps the dream open. The paperwork decides how much it costs to keep it that way. The listing sells you the acre. It never sells you what's actually underneath it. You decide.